Tell me how you got into the Air Force. What made you want to go into the Air Force?
Okay, it started early, really. My father was a pilot, taught cadets to fly in World War II as a civilian instructor at Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas. And after that, he was in aviation a lot. He flew also in Muskogee and training cadets in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and Little Rock, Arkansas. And then later he operated or managed an airport and did charter service for hunters out of Okmulgee, Oklahoma. And I just got flying in my blood, although I never did learn how to fly. Always wanted to. He was too busy. I went to OBU after graduating from high school, Oklahoma Baptist University, Shawnee, Oklahoma, and was there 3 years. Met my wife there. We dated for 1 year. And then I dropped out to join the Air Force during the Korean War.
So this would have been what year, Ed?
51.
Okay.
And enlisted as an airman basic at Lackland Air Force Base. Went through boot camp and applied for aviation cadets and was accepted quite rapidly, and started aviation cadet training in October of that 1951. And so that's how I got in. That's why I got in, because I just wanted to fly.
So what did you fly when you were a cadet? What did they train you on?
Well, I started in the T-6 Texan. It's that yellow airplane up there on the wall.
Okay.
And that was the basic training. And that's the first time they had ever started. It was an advanced trainer prior to the time we started. They usually started in Cessna something or the other, you know, two-seater. And they decided to try starting us out in that tail dragger with a big engine then, you know, comparatively. So I flew that, loved it, and did fine. Then went on into advanced training in a T-28, which is up there on the shelf. It's a bigger airplane, but a single engine, single pilot. Actually had 2 seats in it, like the T-6 did, for the instructor in the back. So I flew that, and then I flew the T-33, which is an old workhorse trainer that's been around in the Navy and the Air Force for 100 years, I think. But that was a great airplane, so that's the first 3 I flew, the T-6, the T-28, and the T-33. And then I flew also in training, gunnery training, the F-80, which was a jet, first jet fighter, operational in the U.S. Air Force, or any air, you know, the Army Air Force or the U.S. Air Force, which also just began about that time, after World War II.
Yeah, because there was
no Air Force, U.S. Air Force during World War II.
Right, it was U.S. Army Air Force.
Army Air Force, that's right.
Right. Okay, then after you moved into the jets, was that were you on an active duty assignment in the States flying jets?
Yes. Out of training, I went through training in gunnery and in instrument training, both in T-33 airplane. Well, the F-80 is a modification of the T-33 jet trainer. And then I flew a little bit in the P-51. But in the jets, I was after instrument training, which was very valuable training. all of it was, but that was especially. I was assigned to SAC, Strategic Air Command, at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas, flying F-84s, which is models of those are up there on the wall. And our mission was to deliver nuclear weapons in USSR, Russia. And every pilot had a target. And we studied that target and the route in, you know, all the way to get to it, and from wherever. You know, when we were in Norway, our target would be a target in western part of Europe. And if we're in Alaska on alert, we would have a target in that region of Russia, the farthest east, and also we were stationed in Japan with those airplanes, and we had targets in that close by Russia.
When you say you had targets, I mean you would fly missions, right? These are in effect they're training missions.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not really dropping.
No, you're not going to drop bombs on them for practice.
But you are flying. You're flying as much of the route as you can? How does that work?
Well, you can't fly the route, you just study the route. And in order to be able to do that and be confident you could find your target, we traveled all over the United States flying low-level missions for the first time with targets that were hard to find, turning points, navigation points. We were at 200 or 100 to 200 feet off the ground.
And flying how fast?
450 knots. So we would have these training missions that were tests as to how well we could hit the target. That would be a winding route through terrain that we didn't have any real landmarks of significance to navigate by. And you just dead reckoning is what it was. Navigation, no radio aids whatsoever. And we were tested to see how far off time we could be right over the middle of the target from takeoff. So it was good training. And the maps were good, you know, the sectional maps, they called it, small scale, as opposed to 50,000 to 1. They were, you know, much smaller scale. So they had a lot of roads and bridges and other natural landmarks that were useful for the low-level navigation, and they had them all over the world. So we could study our route, our target and our route, and we knew it cold. We would practice it in mentally, and we did the actual flying of low-level routes. That was how we trained. In addition to our training, we trained on how to deliver the weapon once we got there, which was a low-level approach. Pull up over the top, fly right over the top of the target, pull up 4 Gs, release it just past vertical, and way up in there, and then roll over on an Immelman and exit the area the same way you came in, low level. So that was our mission, and it was always one way.
I don't understand what you mean, one way.
Couldn't get back.
Couldn't get back. Wow.
So we had to plan an area where we were going to eject when we ran out of gas and walk out.
Yeah. Good night.
That was the mission.
Yeah. So,
no one knew about it. My wife didn't know about it. She didn't know what we were doing.
And I mean, without
going into too much detail, what kind of munition, I mean, it's a nuclear...
It was a nuclear weapon that was about the size of a Nagasaki bomb.
Physically, how big is that?
It was about as big as a 1,000-pound bomb, roughly. A big can of napalm was about the same size. It was a torpedo type, or a long cylindrical bullet-shaped weapon.
How long did you have this assignment, this Tactical Air Force Command assignment?
1953 to 1959.
Okay.
And I don't think it ended there. I just left the squadron and was admitted into AFIT, Air Force Institute of Technology program for higher education, and I was sent to Oklahoma State to get a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. So that's why I left the squadron when I did. But they continued on, and I really can't tell you, probably on until the Cold War was over with that mission. So what we would do is, from Bergstrom Air Force Base, we would take our airplanes and everything that goes with it to Misawa, Japan, or Fairbanks, Alaska, or Norway. You know, it just depends on which.
So you'd physically...
We would physically move.
And then you'd fly the mission
from there.
From there.
Yeah.
So you...
And while we were there, we would fly. We'd be scrambled, and when we scrambled, we didn't know whether we were going to be a real mission or whether it was training. And of course, every time we did, while I was doing it, it was called off about the time you crossed the no-go line. That's just serious. You know, that's just real.
What'd you tell Jean about why you were gone on these missions?
She had no idea what we did. I mean, we were not supposed to talk about it, and I can see why. Everybody could understand that. So she just didn't know. To ask her, I mean, she was shocked by that what I did.
Okay, after the so you went to school now.
Yeah.
Got your degree in electrical engineering.
Yes.
Okay. What happened after that?
I was sent to Systems Command, Air Force Systems Command, they call it. And the Systems Command has Aeronautical Systems Engineering Division, Space Systems Division, and not logistics, but that's another command, Logistic Command, but others. And I was in the Space Systems Division at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, northwest on the northwest coast of Santa Barbara, California. Everybody seems to know where that is. Vandenberg is on the Pacific Ocean, and the mission there was to develop and launch and test and make operational ICBMs, both Minuteman and Atlas and Titan. And so my job there was work for Atlas F ICBM development and testing. It was a silo-based, big hole in the ground where this ICBM would be stored, and then before it was launched, you'd fill it with liquid nitrogen, and it would launch out of the silo after you open a big, huge concrete door on the top of the silo, bring it up above ground, and launch it downrange to the Kwajalein Islands, about 5,000 miles away, where it's supposed to hit its target. And the challenge was to get it to go 2 miles without failure. And we did. And we had several successful launches between 61 and 64. I was out there doing that. So I had a site, Site C, on the USAF program. There were several sites, A, B, and C. And each site had a mission to do testing, for the missile and launching. So that was interesting.
It is interesting. After this experience, were you then sent to Vietnam? Was that when the Vietnam?
No, I was sent to Space Systems Division in Los Angeles, south of the airport, LAX, about a mile, is a cluster of buildings called the Los Angeles Air Force Station. And the purpose of that was to manage the downrange target areas for the ICBM launches. So it's part of that program, but the downrange side of it. And so I worked there from 64 to 66. And while I was there, I went to school at USC to work off a master's degree, night school. And by the way, my flying then, like at Vandenberg, was just proficiency flying.
Just
T-33, really, back to the old T-33. Just to keep your flying proficient at least enough to be ready to use. And while I was at the Los Angeles Air Force Station there, by the way, a side story, when I first walked in the door of that big building that was where I was going to work, there was a cluster of offices on the right that said Global Positioning System. And it was the very beginning of GPS. It was developed by the Air Force for navigation purposes.
interesting. Yeah.
Nobody who would ever envision that every car and cell phone would have one.
Our phones, yeah.
Right. Anyway, while I was there, I was called up to go to Vietnam.
Had you finished your master's before you were called up?
As a matter of fact, I had. I actually started it while I was at Vandenberg, doing the work, patching it together. And I had 1 semester at Oklahoma State to finish up the degree. So I've got a master's degree by that time. And so I got a call from the Air Force that said, we're going to put you at AC 147s. 147. You know, Goonie Bird, the Goonie Bird. I can't remember the number of it. But anyway.
I don't know what it looks like.
Well, a Goonie Bird is a 2-engine cargo plane converted into a gunship. And that's what I was had to go fly, which it just broke my heart. I tried to talk about it. I said, I'm a fighter pilot. I've never flown a 2-engine airplane except the F-101, and that was not a good airplane. I don't like 2 engines. They said, you're going to. So I showed up at Hurlbut Field at Eglin Air Force Base down in Florida. Panhandle. And the first thing I did, I found out that there was an A1 class mine. My C-47 gunship class was starting the next day, along with the starting of an A1 class. A1 is that hoss of a prop job fighter up there. And I said, oh, wow, I got to go do some salesman work. So I was going to the A1 barracks, knocking on doors, asking this guy would answer the door, and I'd say, I'm here to sell you a C-47 gunship seat, if you'll trade. I didn't talk to anybody except these guys. And they just treated me like I was an idiot or drunk or something. How could you possibly ask me that? Finally, I found the guy. I just kept on knocking on doors and knocking on doors until late at night. I was still knocking on doors. And I finally got on a guy who was just the opposite of me. He had never flown a single-engine fighter or anything else single-engine. He had always flown multi-engines, and he just was hoping that he didn't have to fly A1s. I said, I'll set it up. We'll go see the base commander, or the commander of this outfit, which happened to be the base commander, and call and schedule an appointment the next morning that we were supposed to show up at our classroom. And I walked in, this colonel, and I said, here's my story, here's our story. And we're excellent twin-engine and multi-engine pilots and fighter pilots, but we're just in the wrong seats. Can you swap us? He said, makes sense to me. So,
Did he?
he did.
That's great. I thought you were going to have a hard time selling him.
I didn't know, but it was easy.
Good, good.
So he just said, you go A1s, you go C-47, I'll take care of the paperwork.
Exactly what you want.
Exactly. So anyway, that's one of my favorite stories at the airport.
Ah, that is good. Well, was the A1 all you wanted it to be?
It was more. Actually, I was just a little disappointed that I didn't get into jets. The F-100s were flying, and I could fly any of them. I mean, if you fly one of them, you can fly them all. I was not only happy about the airplane, but the assignment was in Udon, Thailand. And that is after I graduated from and got over there. I got assigned to Search and Rescue Squadron in Udon, Thailand, which is right up on the Laotian, northern Laotian border.
So you were actually stationed in Thailand, not
Right.
in Vietnam.
Right.
But you flew.
I went through Vietnam, staging in,
Yeah.
landed at Da Nang,
Yeah.
and did the processing and so forth, and they flew me over into Thailand, to Udon, Thailand.
Tell me what a search and rescue mission is like.
Okay.
What is that?
Well, it could be with the Coast Guard or any civilian rescue operation over land. This was all over land. Could be a search and rescue over water, and so forth. But generally speaking, you go out and find the person that's been reported missing or downed, in this case, shot down. You need a team. The team was 4 A1s per flight, per mission, per sortie, and 1 HH-53 Jolly Green Giant. That was the actual rescue operators. And in addition, there was a back-off C-130 named Crown, which was electronic and communications coordinator of strike missions and rescue missions. And so I'll paint the picture of how it happens. The fighter squadron is assigned to hit Hanoi, say, or somewhere in North Vietnam. And so they scramble the fighters, and somebody happens to get shot down. Those are usually hostile territories, very well guarded and protected. So when a fighter gets shot down, the people that are with him know it and report the rough coordinates, geographical coordinates of where this parachute was seen going down into the trees, usually karst jungle, mountainous area. So Crown, the C-130, would be monitoring all this transmissions about how things are going and how things aren't going so well. And they receive this call that XYZ is down. So they call the Sandys. Our A1 squadron is called Sandy, S-A-N-D-Y. They call us, we're on alert. We have 6 people, or 8 even, on alert, depends on the size of the mission. Strike mission I'm talking about. And so we're on alert, and we get a call from Crown and said, scramble, 4, we got a down in the air crew or more, 1 or more. Here's the coordinates. There were no radio aids, no navigation aids, no GPS, no nothing. I mean, if we had GPS, it'd have been a piece of cake to find them. If the coordinates are right, we'd get to them. Anyway, we would dead reckoning navigate to those coordinates, and that was a required skill in navigating, because there wasn't anything but high mountain peaks and karst mountains and river view, no roads speak of. But anyway, you'd go up there and you'd find him, hopefully, because they do have, if it's working, a handheld radio beacon that can talk and send a signal out. So if it can't talk, you can send the signal you can home in on if you get close enough. So you can begin to narrow it down by flying at these signals, and your needle points to it, where it's coming from. In the cockpit, I'm talking about. And so you find him. You find the parachute. Sometimes that's not easy to find because of foliage and so on. But once you find it, the target and the man, especially if you can talk to him, you know a lot more about what the situation is on the ground if they can talk to him. Then you look around and see how much fire you're taking and how much it's going to take to neutralize it. And usually when they're shot down, it's not in very friendly territory. I mean, it's something going on that's bad. And unless they can cripple out far enough so they're in by bad guys. So you suppress the area with weapons, and we were loaded for bear with the A1s, but we want to try to save that if there's anybody else around that we can help neutralize. So when we get ready to escort the mop up and take care of the chopper coming in to get them, we had all top priority to call in anything in the air that had munitions left. Crown would take care of that. I'd say, well, here, I'd just tell them, here's what we need. 2 flights of 4 with 500-pound, 100-pound white phosphorus, napalm, whatever. Bring me anything you can bring me. And they would be there in no time. And I had 21 flights of 4 at one pickup that I called in. We had absolute priority. And the ground rules in Vietnam, there's a little bit of regress. The ground rules were just crazy. I mean, crazy like we take pictures of SAM sites under construction every day. We know the day before they're going to be operational. Can't fire at them until they launch a missile at you. We could take them, we could let them get perfectly ready to the next day, crock the trigger and fire one, and we could take them out just like that.
Couldn't do it ahead of time.
Couldn't do it ahead of time. Well, rules like that were all over the place. But for the SAR mission, our only ground rule was do whatever it takes to get them out.
Pretty good.
Which was just really good. I mean, you just had the right and authority to do what was necessary. And that helped a lot. Anyway, we would suppress the area, and when we felt like it was safe to bring the chopper in, we would go out and get the chopper, escort him in, stop him right over the pilot. He'd pick him up, we'd escort him out. And that's exactly the way it worked.
How many of those kind of missions did you fly?
148.
Wow.
Well, not all of those missions were SAR, search and rescue. We had 2 missions, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But we lost 24 A1s to 1 Jolly Green. So the A1 mission was very dangerous.
You guys,
We lost a lot of guys.
you were in first, taking all the fire, everything.
Right.
Yeah. Boy.
And that's no exaggeration. I mean, it's just, everybody's heard of Jolly Greens, but very few people have heard us even know this. We're Sandy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I'm not complaining about that, because our rapport with the Jolly Green pilots were just, they thought we were good guys.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right.
Because they really had no,
They couldn't do what we were doing. I mean,
they couldn't do anything.
and they would not be safe. They had lost a lot of helicopters, and failed to pick up the guy or gal. No gals. Weren't any gals then.
Not that
We've become a lot more civilized now. We let females fly combat. Anyway, that was a great and very rewarding type of mission, and I was glad that I got it. It was a couple of those missions I got a Silver Star for.
2?
2, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What was special about those missions?
Well, the first one was when we were called to scramble. It was in South Vietnam, or it was actually southern Laos. It was just right on the border of South Vietnam and southern Laos. Got a call that the commander of fighter squadron, F-100 fighter squadron in South Vietnam, had been shot down. And so we scrambled, gave us the coordinates and so forth. And when we got in the air, I found out that the Army had sent in a rescue chopper, to rescue. I really don't know who they were or how trained they were or what, but there was a pilot and a co-pilot. The pilot was a senior, maybe a captain or major. The co-pilot was a brand new first mission second lieutenant. And they were in the area of where the pilot was and got shot. The pilot got shot right through the head of the chopper. And the lieutenant was kind of excited and didn't know what to do, and they told him to go back home. And go back to the base, and we'll let the Sandies and Jolly Greens take it. So when we got there, there'd already been one chopper down, you might say, casualty. Found a hard time finding him, his parachute, because no communication, and there was a lot of ground fire all over the place. And finally spotted the parachute, and then looked around the area and found a mirror signal.
What did that mean?
Well, it means that the pilot has a mirror. You carry a rescue in your kit, survival kit. You carry a mirror that can be used to signal somebody in the air if you don't have any way else to communicate. So he would flash that mirror at me in Morse code and said SOS, you know. And so I started tracking that mirror, and he was going up the mountain, and we started laying down ordnance behind him and side of him and ahead of him, and he was headed right for 50 caliber machine gun nest at the top of the mountain. So we took that out and never hear from it again, and he went right by it, over the top of the mountain and down. This is a collapsing time a lot, because it takes him, he's walking.
And you're flying around.
I'm flying around trying to keep track of him so I could lay ordnance down in front of him and some behind him, just to make sure somebody wasn't chasing him. And so I chased him all over the top of the mountain and down into the valley, and we had got ahead of him out there, and there was got a lot of ground fire, and we put some napalm down. And this is where I was calling in 20, it seemed like 24, I didn't really count. I wrote them down when I called them in, but it was over 20, 25, or whatever. But that's flights of 4. We ended up picking him up in a burned out napalm area. And there was so much fire, before I brought the choppers in, I made a slow low-level pass over the area where we'd be picking him up, to see if I could pick up any ground fire. Because I could hear it with the engine back, and I could hear it. I could hear it if it hits the airplane, and hopefully it didn't hit me. And I got through that, and I said, okay, let's bring him in. So we escorted him in, picked him up, right back out. So that's the one I got a silver star. As a matter of fact, Gerald Westmoreland, I don't know whether you remember him.
Sure.
He flew up from Saigon up to Udor, Thailand, and pinned a silver star on me. So it was a big deal for me. Anyway, I thought that was a good story, and it was a very hairy mission. The other one was up near Dien Bien Phu. Dien Bien Phu is the last battle the French had with the Vietnam, or I think they call them then. Got up there, and there was a lot of ground fire, and it took a lot of extra help from the fighters with munitions to neutralize that area. We finally brought the choppers in, and this was a long mission, and everybody's running low on gas.
How long are we talking about?
Well, that mission was 7 hours.
7 hours.
Yeah. Anyway, we put this guy on the ground, and there was a guy that had to be put in a basket. He was injured, the down pilot. So the medevac went down and put him in a basket, and as soon as he got him in the basket, ground fire started, and the chopper pulled him through the trees.
So he's hanging.
He's hanging in a cable on the end of this basket, and they reeled him in after they got him clear of the trees. But now we had a airman medic on the ground, and it wasn't 7 hours then, it was 7 hours when it was over. This was not over at all. So had to call in sent the 3 Sandys there that were with me back to base while they still had fuel to get there. And I stayed around till the other Sandys got there and showed them, briefed them on what was happening, and showed him where he was. And then I took off and called Crown. I said, "Is there any place to land around here?" They said, "Sorry, bud, there isn't any place to land. Except," he said, there's a graded off mountaintop, coordinates XYZ. And I said, sometimes it's controlled by friendlies and sometimes it's not. You can go around land if you want to, or you can eject somewhere. They wouldn't have ejection seat, bail out. No ejection seat on the A1. A1, no. So I thought, well, I'll go over and take a peek. And so I found it, landed the airplane, there's just a few gallons left of fuel. Taxied up, pull out, there was a dirt strip. Taxied over on a little pull out there where it was obvious that that's where they would fuel if they had any. And so I just pulled up there and shut off the engine and sat there, opened the cockpit, canopy, and sat there and waited. And pretty soon I saw some rustling in the bush. Oh boy, I had my pistol out. I was going to go down and do shooting if I had to. But anyway, they're friendlies. And of course we couldn't communicate, but they knew what I needed. And I went out, got out and opened up the wing tank caps. And they had a 55-gallon drum. I wheeled out there, cranked that gas in, and I sealed up the wing tanks and out of there. I thanked them, you know.
So you
many
actually
thanks.
got the Silver Star that time.
I did.
For staying around,
Right.
making sure that this medic was protected.
Right, we got him out.
You got him out. Yeah. Good deal. Good.
So anyway, that's two of them.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about that mission is that there were a lot of people shot down, and we didn't get them all. I mean, we just stayed there and fought, and you know, they just the last call he'd make on the ground was they got me.
Yeah.
So nothing you can do. You can't drop a bomb on that. You know, the A1 was a good airplane, but they finally replaced it with the A10. The A10 is a warthog, is the nickname.
The big, kind of the nose, funny nose.
Yeah, it's got a 30mm Gatling gun in the nose.
Yeah.
It's a tank killer. The reason they built it was to take care of the tanks from Russia flowing across Europe.
Wow.
And it would shoot down a building or a tank or anything else. And that Gatling gun.
Did you fly that?
No, I didn't. I worked on it in the R&D side. up at Wright-Patterson. That was after I got back from Vietnam. And actually I came back to a logistics job where we did ground electronics engineering and installation in Central USA, Central and South America. And that was an interesting mission too. You know, the ILSs and the BORs and what have you.
What do those things stand for? What is it?
They're radio beacons.
Okay.
ILS is a glide slope and beacon. Beacons along the route to tell you where you are toward the path to the airport, and the glide slope is telling you how to fly the angle down to. I'm talking about 0, 0.
No visibility at all.
No, you can. I've landed many times that way. So we install those facilities in airports and around where navigational aids are needed en route.
Did you finish your Air Force career at Wright-Patterson?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. After the logistics command job, the Air Force called and said, "You want to get a PhD?" I said, "Not a bad idea. If I can, you know, if I'm smart enough."
They're paying, right?
Yeah, they sent me to school again,
That's great.
and I got a PhD
Where did
in
they send you?
Oklahoma State.
Right back.
And yeah, so I got a PhD, and then I went to Wright-Patterson.
Terrific. When you look back on all your Air Force experiences, which is there one that stands out as more meaningful to you than any of the others?
Well, I think the combat tour was definitely the most, what I felt like was most rewarding experience from just a standpoint of helping the good guys.
How many pilots were you involved in actually rescuing? Do you know?
I'd say 40, 30 or 40. I didn't really count them, but there was a lot. All of those missions were the same, and except we did have strike missions. You know, I mentioned we did have if we weren't on alert for a Sandy mission, we were just on alert for a Tactical Air Command strike mission. And our intelligence briefings and strike targeting was done by Air America, which was a CIA operation. That was not known by the general public, but that's who it was. And we would be briefed on where they need some help in striking a bridge or striking a water crossing if it wasn't a bridge, or striking a water crossing that wasn't a bridge when there was a bridge a mile down the road that they could use. You know what I'm saying? This is the rules of engagement that were screwed up.
Yeah.
They could cross with, we were hitting where they were crossing with rubber rafts, the rivers I'm talking about, and there was a bridge, highway bridge. Couldn't touch it.
This government.
There were areas where we couldn't, this is the strike mission now. There were areas where it was reported that there were Chinese advisors, and we couldn't hit that area, although it was a lot of ground fire, so we just didn't fly over it, obviously, because we could not hit that even if we were shot at and hit.
Really? You had to just...
I'm telling you, the rules of engagement, you know, we had a colonel that was an F5 squadron commander, came back, Robin Olds, And he reported to Congress that it's been said that we fought this war with one hand tied behind our back. I'm going to correct that. It was two.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that was hard. Yeah, I was squadron operations officer. And it was hard convincing those young bucks that it was their duty to go out there and hang their rear out every day with the rules of engagement like they were. It was not, I don't know who made them up, but anyway.
I would certainly understand when you say that's the most rewarding thing that happened to you, that combat experience,
Yeah.
searching and being responsible for rescuing those pilots. How would you sort of evaluate your overall Air Force experience in light of what it meant to you as a person? What would you say about that?
Oh, I think it was a very positive overall. I would do it again. My experience in the Air Force was very good, very positive. I made promotions below the zone, all the way up to colonel. I would have probably done better than colonel if I'd have stayed in, but the political scene at Wright-Patterson was really an education for me. The weapon system acquisition process, which is a good process, and it's sort of followed properly. But the major weapon systems are not funded properly by the Congress. They're advocates and adversaries for every major weapon system, whether it's a ship, airplane, tank, whatever. And it goes through a approval process that is exhaustive. And it is voted on exhaustively and carefully to decide whether to commit to build it. But once you start building it, and I'll give you the B-1 example as a case in point. You're going along and you've got these multiple major contractors on contract developing to a schedule. And it comes time for this year's fiscal budgeting, and the executive branch is asked to provide their budget for the next fiscal year in January. And up until Obama, there's been a regular, systematic executive branch, whether it's Republican or Democrat, they do it on time. And they give it to the Congress, and they're supposed to have it ready by the fiscal year, beginning of the next year, fiscal year. Well, when it comes to weapon systems, it's hard to get what you ask for. It's always a puzzle. How do you play the game? You know, do you ask for more than you need, so they cut you and then you can have enough, or do you ask for what you need? Well, that's the Air Force, at least, in the B-1 program and the A-10 program. We said objectively as we could figure, and these are working with industry. They're the ones who are doing the work. What it's going to cost. Yeah. And you take that one B-1 program and multiply it by every weapon system program, and you take that Secretary of Defense and multiply it by every secretary of every across the country. If they're funding that way everywhere, You know, we're just burning up money by the truckload every year.
Yeah.
Waste. We do need a change in government.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it'll ever come.
I-
But anyway, that is a story that is fact.
Yeah.
And this makes me sick.
I'm with you. Okay, you want to tell me any more about your experiences, or how do you feel?
Well, let's see. I had some interesting survival training.
Yeah, where'd you do that?
High Sierras in California in the dead of winter, minus 27 degrees out there.
Wow.
That was a tough on snowshoes that we had to make.
Yeah.
It was realistic.
How long were you out there?
9 days.
9 days.
Yeah, and it ended up with a escape and evasion. It's up there at Nellis Air Force Base. I mean, yeah, Nellis, up there in Nevada. Not Nellis, that's California. Anyway, it's up there near.
Did you ever have to use your escape and evasion training?
No, I didn't. I also had escape and evasion training in the Philippines for jungle survival before going to Vietnam. Those were interesting and lifelong learning experiences. No, I didn't ever have to eject or.
Good.
In fact, because I didn't ever have to parachute, I came back to Clemson. When I got here to Clemson, I joined the skydivers.
Did you really?
Yeah. Get that experience, that bucket list behind me.
How many jumps did you make?
Just 5.
5.
Yeah. That's Gene drew the line.
Yeah.
About that. Anyway.
Good.
They're good. That's a good club.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Why did you pick Clemson to come?
That's a good story. Let me tell you why I left the Air Force.
Yeah, okay.
We were in the B-1 program, and the original design of the plane that went up there was for a crew capsule that would hold all 4 crewmen. And when you had to eject, the whole capsule rocketed off the plane and righted itself and deployed a chute and bring them down. We worked every way we could. I took a team to NASA and they compared our ejection system with theirs, and they said, in a nutshell, good luck. It's never going to work. And they just really thought it was way too complicated. So we tried and tried on this white sands tracks with ejection to get this thing to work, and we couldn't. And we were having budget problems like crazy that I just mentioned. And so I recommended, the bottom line was, I was chief engineering in the SPO, System Program Office, and I recommended heavily, strongly, to SAC and to the Air Force headquarters that we drop the capsule and go to ejection seats. And there was controversy, big controversy about that. And I kept fighting for it. I said, we just do not have the time or money to make it work. It's a killer. It's going to be not a rescue, it's a killer. And so I lost that. And in the process, I bent my pick sideways. And I felt like it was time for me to leave the Air Force, because I'm very fortunate to get promoted early and so forth, but I didn't want to stick around recovering from that
So you left.
So I just resigned. I retired.
Did you, at that point, had you thought about going into higher education?
Well, I thought about that before I retired. What am I going to do? So Gene and I planned a great circle route around the country, southeast, south, southwest, to see how there might be a fit between academia and my experience. And I didn't even ask if they had any openings when I called the Dean of Engineering at Clemson and Georgia Tech and Auburn and so forth, Texas A&M and Arkansas. And I didn't go to Oklahoma State. I liked it. I mean, I loved Oklahoma State, but I just felt like I needed to go someplace else. So I didn't ask there, although they offered me a job. Anyway, I came to Clemson one morning. We showed up, and that afternoon we went to Georgia Tech and Auburn the next day, and so forth. And that's how I ended up at Clemson. It's because I saw all these lakes and all these mountains and great camping and good. I was very impressed with the university. They were military heritage, and I was very impressed with everything about it. And then I came back for another visit and looked around for a property and saw this house. I thought, gosh, this is falling into place pretty good. So took the job.
So you bought this house when you came back?
Mm-hmm.
Good. What year was that?
74.
74. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was a good decision.
It was a good decision, I think. Okay, how long did you stay with the university, Ed?
10 years.
Okay.
And while I was at B1 program, I got really educated in the need to automate our logistics engineering software, or create the software that didn't exist. And what I'm saying, the logistics side of it, during the engineering design and development and testing and so forth, part of the weapon system is the logistics elements that it takes to support it when it's operational. And historically, there's not been enough money in the budget to do things right when it comes to that business. And what we did do was, in other words, reliability, maintainability, training equipment, test equipment, spare parts, tech orders, all the stuff that it takes to support a fleet of airplanes. And I'm just going to let that ring.
You need to get it?
No. And, anyway, it was stubby pencil and paper, and it created so much data that it's not manageable.
Yeah.
So when I got back to Clemson, I thought, I need to work on that and research, get some money from the Air Force and get some money from Lockheed and Boeing and these companies that I knew, and to fund some research that would help the Air Force do a better job in logistics planning and development. So I did. I got some money, and that research grew into a big funded project, millions of dollars. 31 people full-time working on it. Well, not full-time, but faculty and students and outside people that I brought in one of the guys I brought in from Lockheed was a master at logistics and maintenance. He was a chief warrant officer working for Lockheed in Marietta, Georgia. And I went down there, and they were using, well, that's later. They wanted to fund the software because they saw the need for it. And I said, well, what I'd like to do is, if you don't have any objection to it, I'd like to hire Bob Hankins to come work on it with us. So he's a guy that you know. He was a key guy in Lockheed. And he will help us do the things that he knows you need done. So they said, fine, that's a good idea. I talked to Bob, and he said, I'd love to. Anyway, he agreed to come up. I went to the provost and tried to hire him. Bob Maxwell. David Maxwell. David Maxwell. And he said, well, what's his PhD in? I said, sir, he doesn't have a PhD. All he knows is exactly what we need on this research project. Well, what's his master's in? I said, David, let's just cut right to the chase. He's got an 8th grade education, and all he knows is everything about the software that we need to develop and why we need it. And we need him bad here. He's a real good resource we have an opportunity to hire. And what are you going to hire him? What are you going to pay him? I said, $83,000. He said, you've got to be crazy, Thomas. I said, we've got to have him. It's not any of your money. It's not going to cost you a penny. The Air Force is all for it. Lockheed is for it. Surely we can let that happen. He said, okay. Anyway, he came and he helped us a lot. So.
When did you decide to leave the university and start your own business?
Well, the reason I left is another story. And that is because we finished this project, which was bigger than anything else that ever happened in terms of dollars. The policy of the university said, at that point in time, we want big projects, multidisciplinary, cutting edge, stuff that really the industry needs, everybody needs, so forth. I said, okay. So I hired these 2 guys. They couldn't be principal investigator because the policy says only one faculty member who raises the money can be principal investigator of that project. Anyway, we finished the project, they worked on it, they came up for tenure. I got a tenure committee and pushed it through college, and everybody wants to keep these people. 2 faculty members. Great guys. And David said, no tenure. I said, David, please reconsider. He said, no tenure. They've got to have had their own funds and their principal against. I said, you got to give somebody tenure because they got a $25,000 grant and they wrote 2 papers that nobody read. Maybe not. Maybe somebody did read it. But these guys have been managing a project that 31 people working on it, and the Air Force loves it, Lockheed loves it, Boeing loves it, AIL loves it, so forth. He said, no tenure. I said, well, I quit. I resigned. I was dean of the college at the time. I said, I'm not going to work for anybody who fires people for following their own policy and doing a great job. I quit. He said, you'll have to talk to Bill Atchley, president. I said, I would love to. Told him the same thing. And I said, by the way, I'm going to take this project. There's a follow-on contract that the Air Force is planning to sole source to Clemson University. I'm going to take this project into my business, and I'm going to take all these people. You don't have any money for them.
And that's what you did.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
He said, well, that property doesn't belong to you. I said, it's public domain property. So you have a copy of it in your computer center. You've got a hard copy of all the documentation, user manuals for it. And the only problem is you don't have anybody left here that knows one thing about what it is, why it is, or what it does, why it does it. And I said, I'm leaving. So that's the way I quit.
What year was that?
84.
84.
Yep.
And that's when
The end of 84.
that's when you began the business.
Yep.
Yeah, good. The business.
I called the Air Force and said, there's been a hiccup here. And I told them the story, and they said, well, we'll just give the sole source to your company.
Correct. So you were off and running from that point on.
There's one other significant story that had to do with the Air Force or Clemson. It does have to do with the Air Force because the follow-on contract they awarded to me, it hadn't started when I started the business. It was supposed to, but it hadn't. So I was doing work for Boeing and AIL and Rockwell and others that were using the software I just developed. And they needed somebody to maintain it and support it. And that's what our company did for several months until I heard from the Air Force that there's been a hiccup in the procurement process. An 8A company has thrown their hat into the ring, which is a minority-owned company, and the 8A and the policy of the government, not just the Air Force, not just the Defense Department, is that if a 8A company is qualified or trainable, they get sole source. So you just lost. But, they said, if you would agree to be his prime and only subcontractor and do the work as you've proposed, then we'll go ahead and grant this other guy sole source. And I said, I'll play this game on one condition only, and that is I get what I bid and you approved, and I don't have to hold his hand everything we do. I'll deliver the products to him. I'll deliver the user's manuals, end user's manuals of the software. Everything that we deliver as deliverables, I'll deliver to him, and he can put his name on it and deliver it to you. That's it. But he does not. He does not come here. He's not. I'm not going to train him. I don't have time to do that while we're developing this. I said, okay. He got 10 million, and I got 3.2.
Is that right? And that's the way it worked. I mean, you actually just turned the product over to him.
Right. That is the way it's working, or it worked then.
Yeah, probably still.
And it hasn't changed. I'm sure. Yeah. These 8A companies get fatter than a 40-pound ramen. You know. Mm-hmm. And the Air Force came back to me after the second contract that we finished and did well, and said, here's some more. And I said, no way. I never have taken another government contract.
Is that right?
That's right.
I didn't know that. I thought that was the main.
It ended the first year.
For
The
heaven's
first
sake.
2 years, really.
Yeah.
2.5 years. I said, I just don't feel right about doing this. I mean, it's wasting taxpayer money. Now, I don't mind them getting the contract and doing it,
Yeah. Yeah, but
if they can do it,
they do the work. Yeah.
but not this
Who are your contracts with then? Yeah.
industry.
Industry. The manufacturer of the
Yes.
of the product.
Yes,
Plane,
they're the ones who are making the product and actually use the product to make products.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, and it's working out. There's one other story.
Okay.
In the business I started, we grew pretty fast and moved out to the new property on Old Clemson Highway, built those buildings, and had vision of really growing as big as we could. It made sense. But I passed 62 employees, and the government labor department took over my hiring and firing. I mean, to this extent, I had to submit all of my requests for recruiting material, like job description, here's what we need, qualifications, need a master's degree in computer science, and so forth. Here's the kind of person I want to hire. And they would send me a 2-year degree out of Tri-County Tech in computer information.
Why did the government have anything to do with it if you weren't contracting with the government?
There is a law that says over 50 people, you have to go through the government with your recruiting material and hiring. They provide you with the, now maybe it's only the Defense Department that work, related. I don't know. But I know this, my company was told, you cannot hire anybody that we do not submit to you.
Whoa.
And they weren't submitting the right people.
Yeah, of course.
So what did I do? I downsized to below 50 people, just for that reason, instead of continue to grow as the business deserved to grow. And I said, we will do whatever we can do, the best we can, with 50 or under people, and that's enough. I didn't go into business for that. So that's another thing that is a lesson, life lesson, lifelong learning.
Yeah.
And
You learned lots of lessons in your life. Didn't you?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, those few that I mentioned were game changers.
Yeah.
Leaving the Air Force was a good decision, as it turned out. I might have made general or something, maybe not, but that's what I really would have stayed in if I thought I could still have a shot at making it.
Well, it looks like you were on the track to do it. Yeah.
I definitely was. The Air Force told me that. I said, why are you leaving it? Where do you want to go? We'll send you anywhere you want to go. I was in good shape. I wasn't after that run-in with the B-1. But a year later, when I was here at Clemson, the Air Force got rid of the crew capsule.
Did they?
Yep. It was inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of more than you ever wanted to hear.